Okay, so for those that wanna see how to put your title onto the piece. So what I have here is basically, you know, here's the timeline with 1, 2, 3 pieces. If I scroll over, you can see there's one video number 1 is here, and then as you scroll past, you can see here's my transition right there. You see 1, 2, and it happens so quickly that you're not noticing it, especially when you play it. You know, it just kind of happens, right? Scrolls right over it. Same thing happens here with the swish. I have video here, and then it dives down like that and kind of moves across like that. So let's just say, for instance, that I'm happy with the way that that looks. Now I'm ready to put the title on the piece. And so to do a title, you basically create a video of words. That's what you're doing. You're creating a little clip that is just text on it. So what you'll do is go to File, New, and Legacy Title. So you're in Premiere Pro, you're going to go to File, New, Legacy Title. And when that comes up, you're going to get a little window that comes up that shows how to type in what you're typing in. So I click on that, and oops, it asks you what size you want this text to be. Now, by default, it's going to be the same as the rest of your project. So that for us is 1920 by 1080, 23 frames a second, and so on. So I'm going to call this, you know, text or something like that. That's fine. And we'll say OK. Now, what I have here is a floating window that is just the title box. So this thing is just floating. It's an external little window, and it is attached to visually to the timeline itself. So if you look over here on where the cursor is, I can grab the cursor, which is on my main video, and as I move it, you can kind of see both videos. And so it's just basically giving me a preview of this video that I'm working on, right? So the first thing I want to do is to kind of figure out where I want that title to live in my video. So I'm going to decide that I want it at the beginning of my piece, of course. So you can see I've got the cursor all the way at the beginning of my piece. And I apologize for having to scooch windows around. I'm working on the laptop here, and so all the windows, video is really a screen-hungry, you know, application, and so it's oftentimes better to hook a laptop up to another screen or things like that. When I'm working in my home studio, I've got 2 screens that I work on for video. This is another benefit of coming in and working on the iMacs. You at least have a 20-whatever-inch screen to work off of. Anyway, so I'm going to decide there. Now, you can see that this window has tools that are living right up here. Okay, and the text tool is right there, and it's by default happens. So I can scroll over into the window, and you can see I've got this cursor that I'm kind of circling around right here. I click, and then it's blinking like a cursor would otherwise, right? It kind of blinks like I'm ready to type something. And I just start typing something. I'll just type the word type. Now, by default here, it starts alphabetically with the fonts that I have, and these fonts, the font that kind of comes up first happens to not be a very good font to use, and that's this Academy engraved font. It's terrible because it kind of appears to be invisible, as you can see. However, if I scroll down, I can find something much more appropriate. I would recommend using a bulky, bold, like sans serif typeface, like Helvetica or Futura or something like that. I used Futura last time. I'll use Helvetica this time. And so I have that, and I'm going to grab the little arrow key, and that allows me to pick it up and move it around, and you can see it's still kind of, because it's white, kind of invisible. So I'm going to actually go ahead and make it bold. I'm coming up here to the little interface and make it bold. I'll be able to see it a little bit better that way. And then I can also change the color. Where did they stick my color? Over here, looks like, yeah. The color of it, there's this little color thing right here. Again, this is all because I'm working on such a small screen. Normally, you've got the whole interface and you can see it. And I can change that color Or, as you can see down here, there are some styles that I can choose from, which kind of makes the need for all that I'm doing kind of go away. So for instance, if I just want something like a bold typeface with a drop shadow, I can just click on that and it's going to give me that all together, right? That's sometimes a real quick way to do it. Now that looks a little bit better over the snow because I know there will be snow in here. And so if I choose that and I feel like, okay, that looks good to me, then that's it. As you can see over in this project in the asset window, one of the 4 windows that we work with, it's already living there. It's already there. It just kind of, as soon as I said, make a new legacy type, it automatically made it. And now I'm just actually fine-tuning it. So now all I have to do is close the window. There's no saving to do or anything. I've actually created it now. So now what I do is I grab hold of it and I drag and drop it onto the timeline, wherever it's supposed to go. So I dragged it onto the timeline. It has a certain length by default. As I scroll through, you can see it winds up being about 4 seconds long. If I want it to be longer than that, just like I do with the video and I demonstrated, you can grab hold of it with the cursor, as you can see. I've got the arrow selected, I can come to the end, and I get the little red sort of dashes there, which tell me that I can grab hold of this and move it, make it longer. And it gives me a little bit of an indication down below where it reads duration. So let's just say I want this to be about that long, something like that, right? So now what's happening is the word type is just sort of there, right? And then it blinks away. So it comes on. I'm kind of start it a little bit after the video starts. So the video starts, the title pops up, right? So maybe I don't want it to quite start there, but I'll work on that a little bit later. So that looks good. It pops up, scrolls up. That's plenty long enough for someone to have read it. Then it goes away. Okay. Now, right now it's just turning on and turning off, and that's because I've just got a cut basically going. The video just appears. This video of the text just appears, and then it just disappears. Just goes away. What if I want that to fade in and fade out, right? Normally when you see a title, it doesn't just pop up, it kind of blends itself in and then blends itself out. That's called a fade. And a fade is nothing more than controlling the opacity of whatever it is that I'm trying to fade in and fade out. So how do I get to control the opacity? Well, what I do is I grab the text piece of footage from the timeline and I drag it up to the left quadrant, which was my canvas and video editing quadrant. So I've got the 4 quadrants. I've got the assets over here in the bottom left, the timeline with the sequence over here next to it. Up above, I've got these 2 larger windows, which one of them is for video effects. The other one is a preview of my project if I were to finish it now. So I'm going to drag this up to the top here and drop it. Okay, so now I have the video that is just the type right there in the world there. So now what I want to do is add an effect. In other words, I want to play with or work with the opacity of the clip. So I have to choose effects, which lets me start to work with the video. So I choose effects and suddenly some new things pop up in this window, which is effects control, and I've got some other controls that we won't have to work with just yet. So I've got type. Here it is in the scroll line, you know, but I want to kind of make it so that it fades in and fades out. So I'll go to the effects control, and what you'll see here is some preloaded stuff, some basically the default effects that come with just clicking on it. I can add additional effects later. You know, there are lots of effects in the menus that I can choose from, you know, that I can throw up there. But right now, I get the basic ones, which are motion. That's kind of like if I want to zoom in or zoom out and all kinds of other stuff. I don't use it very much, except if I'm doing masks. Then there's opacity, and opacity is just what it sounds like. I can make the layer, whatever it is, invisible or visible. And I can do that over time. Okay, I can do that over time. So I can make it go from invisible to visible, be visible for a little while, and then go invisible again. And the way to do that is, again, you're right here where the opacity line is. You can see that there's this sort of matching cursor right next to it. And this is all in the same window. And as I scroll this window back and forth, you can see down below, that's moving. So these two things are connected. It's basically a preview. So I decide exactly where do I want the text to be completely visible. Like, where's the moment in this whole world where I want the text to be finished fading in? Not where do I want it to start fading in, but where do I want it to be finished fading in? That's the first thing I want to know. Once I've decided that, I come to the opacity and I indicate that I want to work with the over time. So I click on the little stopwatch or clock icon, and it puts a pin there. That's actually not a pin, it's called a keyframe. But I'm going to call it a pin just because we're sort of like placing placeholders there. So I've got the pin there, and now I keep scrolling the bar and I say, okay, when do I want it to begin fading out? So I think somewhere right about there, I want it to start going from, you can totally see it, to start fading out now. So now I'm going to do, again, I'm going to hit a pin, but only this time, since I've already turned it on, I just add another pin by clicking on here, which is keyframe. So I click there. Now, I've decided the moments where I want it to be totally visible. That's 100% opacity. I can't see through it at all. Now all I have to do is identify where I want it to begin fading in. So I scroll all the way to the beginning, which I presume is where I want it to begin fading in, and I put a pin there, and I come to the opacity percentage and hit 0. Okay? Now I scroll from there all the way to the end where I want it to be completely faded out. So by here I want it to be totally invisible. I don't want to see it anymore. So again, I'll put another pin there and I'll hit 0. And so effectively what I'm doing is I'm creating a situation where the text is going to start from being invisible, and as I slowly bring it up, you can see it sort of fading in, and it gets to the front, and now it's totally opaque, and when it gets to the point where I begin fading it out, it's going to start to fade out like that. Okay? Now this is all custom. There's an effect that I could just drag and drop on this thing, but this gives me much more control, and it also allows us to introduce to you the idea that you can control the way something looks over time in a very customized way. So when I play it now, I'll hit play, you'll see the type fades in, it stays on the screen for that short amount of time, and then it fades out and it goes away. And then my video continues on with whatever it is that I am, working with as far as the timeline. And that's it. That's how you do a title on there. Now, do the best that you can. This is all about introducing it to you and then having you attempt it. I've been recording this. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording at this moment so that I can, let's see, how do I stop recording? Here it is.